On May 16th, 1984, Harvey Mackay walks up to the Minnesota Twins box office and pays over $200,000 for 44,000 tickets on Family Day so he can keep the Twins in Minnesota. Here's the craziness that goes behind this story today on Daily Sports History. Welcome to Daily Sports History. I'm Ethan Reese, your guide to a rapid deep dive into sports history every day. Now, the history of the Twins goes way back to Washington, D.C. in 1901 as one of the original 8 teams of the American League, and their name was the Washington Senators. And in 1905, they changed their name to the Washington Nationals, and that lasted again until 1955 when they changed it back to the Senators until 1960. In 1924, they won their very first American League pennant and their first and only World Series, with legendary pitcher Walter Johnson leading the way. But after that, they struggled for the next 25 years, having only moderate success, and the owner, Calvin Griffith, was ready to move on. As in 1955, he took over the team and actually sold the Griffith Stadium to the city of Washington, who leased it back to them, which at the time was a common move, and what the Boston Braves, St. Louis Browns, and Philadelphia Athletics had all done before so they could move to other cities. And in 1955, he started flirting with different options, even possibly going all the way to San Francisco. But he settled on Minneapolis, and his reasoning is actually kind of sad. Here's a quote from Calvin Griffith on his reasoning for moving to Minnesota. In his own words, "I'll tell you why we came to Minnesota. It was that I found out you only had 15,000 blacks here. Black people don't go to ball games, but they fill up a razzling ring and put such a chant it'll scare you to death. It's unbelievable. We came here because you are good, hardworking, white people." All I can say is, wow. That is terrible. And I think it's great what the city did later to kind of push him out. Because the team actually started out pretty good with their time with the Twins, as Hall of Famer Rod Carew was coming into his own, and they won the American League pennant in 1965, just 4 years after being in Minnesota. And how they got the team name was interesting. They wanted to be called the Twin Cities to bring Minneapolis and St. Paul together, as previously the NBA had the Minneapolis Lakers, who moved to Los Angeles due to poor attendance, and they thought maybe it's because St. Paul didn't want to support a team called Minneapolis, so they didn't want to have that issue. So they wanted to call it the Twin City Twins. Major League Baseball rejected that, and they later changed it to the Minnesota Twins so they could include both the cities, even though they played in Minneapolis. But by the 1980s, the Metropolitan Stadium started to become in disrepair, and the Metropolitan Stadium, which the Twins shared with the Vikings, was becoming too small for football, as the AFL and NFL merger included a rule that the stadiums had to have capacity over 50,000, and the most the Metropolitan Stadium could hold was 49,000. So they needed a new stadium, and this was an outdoor stadium, and they thought that both the Vikings and the Twins could benefit by having an indoor arena, which they had seen successful previously at the Astrodome and was becoming more and more popular. And so they put together plans to fund the Metrodome, which would be a 10-year effort to support the team. And the leader and the chairman of the Metrodome committee was Harvey Mackay, a prominent businessman in Minnesota. And the project to build the Metrodome would cost $68 million and over $124 million in infrastructure cost. It was a huge undertaking, but they knew they could make it back by keeping their teams. But unfortunately, the Twins included a clause in their lease that if they did not average over 2 million in attendance over a 3-year period, then the owner could break the lease and move the team. So after 2 years of a slumping team, the attendance had fell under 1 million per year. So they were coming up on a 3rd year in 1984. In that year, 1984, they needed to sell 2.4 million tickets in order to keep the team in Minnesota. So McKay got with local business people in the area and convinced them to donate, and they donated over $6 million to help them buy tickets, whether people attended the game or not. And that all started on May 16th, 1984, when he bought over 2,000 tickets. And he would do this for every game, buying multiple tickets as much as he could, spending that $6 million so they could keep the team in Minnesota. Because by this time, Calvin Griffith, the owner of the Twins, was trying to move to a warmer location. And it didn't matter, as the team had been struggling for multiple years. Although their farm system had some great talent behind it, the team itself on the field in 1984 was not good and had not been good for years. And seeing the writing on the wall, Calvin Griffith finally sold to Carl Pollard, who purchased 97.5% of the Twins from Calvin. Now, there was another offer from Donald Trump, and Calvin said he took Carl Pollard's offer as he wanted to keep the team in Minnesota. But the issue was more that the lease could not be broken due to the tickets that were being sold to the group by Harvey Mackay, and Donald wanted the team to be near New York. So the team was sold and got away from the racist owner they had. And despite the actual attendance being well under 1 million, they had sold over 2.5 million tickets that year and were able to keep the team in Minnesota. And it's a good thing they did, because they had an upstart team led by Kirby Puckett leading the way, changing the team's fortune. And in 3 short years, the 1987 team won the World Series, beating the St. Louis Cardinals. And the following year, in 1988, the Twins were the first team in American League history to draw over 3 million fans in a season. And these were actual fans, not just people buying tickets to keep the team. The Twins have been a staple in Minnesota ever since, winning another World Series in 1991 and consistently having great teams throughout the years. And hopefully will stay that way for years. And I think we can all take away from this story hearing just how great it is that fans decided whether the team could move or not these owners that have millions of dollars already. I understand the reason of moving can be very lucrative and good for the league sometimes, but small market teams in the Midwest have rabid fan bases, and if you allow that to grow, it will be there for years and years. And the Twins were allowed to grow their fan base, and to hear the Twins moving now would just feel wrong. So being a fan doesn't mean you can't do anything to support your team and keep your team where it is. And I want to keep you where you are as one of our fans. So follow or subscribe wherever you're listening so you don't miss any episode, because we'll be back tomorrow for more Daily Sports History.